Humans lack venom. They possess no natural armor. When the Galactic Council demanded to see the apex predator that conquered Earth, expecting a hulking beast of fangs and fury, Dr. Percival Hollings simply smiled, tapped his own chest, and whispered, "You're looking at it." They laughed. They shouldn't have. The Armstrong orbital tether was an engineering marvel, a space elevator anchored just off the coast of Florida, funded by a tense coalition between the United Nations, SpaceX, and Lockheed Martin. Today, however, it wasn't a hub of human commerce. It was a courtroom. Humanity was facing the assessment. The Galactic Concordat, a multi-species hegemony that controlled the Orion Cygnus arm of the Milky Way, had finally arrived. They weren't hostile, but they were ruthlessly pragmatic. To join the Concordat as a sovereign species, a race had to prove its biological and societal worth. Failure meant Earth would be classified as a resource world, its population relegated to indentured stewardship, while alien megacorporations stripped the planet of its lithium, cobalt, and fresh water. Dr. Percival Hollings, lead xenoecologist and former head of biological research at DARPA, stood at the center of the tether's grand observation deck. Beside him stood General Thomas Reed of U.S. Space Command, his jaw set in a rigid, anxious line. Sitting across from them were the assessors. They were towering, mantis-like bipeds, clad in iridescent, bioorganic armor. Their lead representative, translated through a Boston Dynamics neural-linguistic matrix simply as the magistrate, looked down at Percival with multifaceted eyes that betrayed zero empathy. "Your technological progression is adequate, if highly volatile," the magistrate's synthesized voice echoed through the chamber, dripping with aristocratic boredom. "However, the Concordat does not integrate prey. A sovereign species must hold dominion over its cradle world through absolute biological supremacy. We have reviewed your planet's biosphere. Show us your apex. Show us the beast that drove your evolution." Percival tapped a command onto his tablet. The center of the room bloomed with hyper-realistic holographic projections. The Siberian tiger materialized first, roaring silently as it swiped massive razor-sharp claws. The great white shark followed, its rows of serrated teeth gleaming in virtual sunlight. The Kodiak bear reared up on its hind legs last, standing over 9 feet tall, a mountain of muscle and primal fury. The magistrate leaned forward, mandibles clicking in mild interest. "Fascinating biomechanics. The aquatic predator is highly efficient. The mammalian berserker exhibits terrifying brute force. Which of these subjugated the others to rule your world?" "None of them," Percival said, his voice calm, echoing clearly in the sterile room. He swiped his hand through the holograms, dismissing the fearsome beasts into a cloud of blue pixels. "They are confined to their specific biomes. They don't rule the world. We do." The magistrate's mandibles stopped clicking. The alien stared at Percival, then at General Reed, and then let out a sound that the translator matrix registered as derisive laughter. "You?" The magistrate scoffed. A holographic display of a human anatomy chart suddenly appeared between them, projected from the alien's own databanks. "We have analyzed your physiology, Dr. Hollings. You are a biological anomaly, and frankly a pathetic one." The alien pointed a long, chitinous finger at the glowing human skeleton. "Your dermis is barely a millimeter thick, easily punctured by even the weakest flora on your planet. You possess no natural armor, no venom, no camouflage. Your auditory and olfactory ranges are embarrassingly narrow. Your jaw structure is blunt and weak, incapable of tearing raw flesh. You require constant hydration, and your young are born entirely helpless for years." The magistrate waved its hand dismissively. "You are not an apex predator. You are scavengers who stumbled upon the concept of combustion. Tools are a crutch for the weak. Without your artificial weapons, you are prey. The Concordat does not grant sovereignty to prey." General Reed shifted on his feet, his hand instinctively twitching toward the sidearm he wasn't allowed to carry. But Percival just smiled. It wasn't a polite smile. It was the cold, calculated grin of a man who knew a secret. "Magistrate," Percival began, pacing slowly around the holographic human anatomy. "You look at our lack of claws and see weakness. You look at our thin skin and see vulnerability. But you fundamentally misunderstand the nature of Earth's evolutionary crucible. Our planet didn't force us to develop armor or venom. It forced us to develop endurance." Percival zoomed in on the human muscular and nervous systems. "We don't hunt by overpowering our prey in a burst of speed. We hunt by never, ever stopping." The magistrate seemed unimpressed. "Persistence is irrelevant if you cannot survive the initial strike of a true predator." "Is it?" Percival challenged, his voice dropping an octave. "You believe tools are a crutch. We believe they are a manifestation of our minds, our true weapon. But even stripped of our rifles and our drones, we are nightmares. We are the monsters that Earth's fiercest beasts learn to fear in the dark." The magistrate's eyes narrowed. "Bold words, human. But the Concordat operates on empirical truth, not poetic rhetoric. If you claim to be the apex, you will prove it. Not with a simulation, with a trial of blood." The trial was set in the Tether's lower quarantine bay, a massive, reinforced spherical arena usually utilized by DARPA for hazardous materials testing. The walls were lined with titanium mesh and blast glass. The magistrate stood in the secure observation gallery, flanked by Percival and General Reed. Down in the pit, the alien assessment team was offloading a containment pod. "This is a Krell hound," the magistrate announced, as the heavy steel doors of the pod hissed open. "Sourced from the death world of Vantros. It is an apex predator of the highest order. It possesses subcutaneous armor, venomous spurs, and can close a distance of 50 meters in under 3 seconds. It hunts for pleasure." From the shadows of the pod, a nightmare emerged. It was the size of a rhinoceros, moving low to the ground on 6 muscular, multi-jointed legs. Its hide was a mottled, charcoal-gray carapace, and its eyeless head was dominated by a cavernous maw lined with translucent, needle-like teeth. Acidic saliva dripped from its jaws, hissing as it hit the steel floor. "Your trial is simple," the magistrate said, turning to Percival. "Survive in the habitat with the Krell hound for 1 standard hour without your advanced kinetic or thermal weaponry. If you are the apex, prove it. Who among you will face it?" Percival wasn't a soldier, and he wasn't stupid. He looked at General Reed, who simply nodded. The heavy airlock on the human side of the arena cycled open. Stepping into the harsh, artificial light was Captain David Miller. Miller wasn't a scientist. He was a former Delta Force operator, currently contracted out to the private military firm, Academy. He was 6'2", built like a brick wall, and wearing nothing but standard tactical fatigues, a pair of combat boots, and a sleeveless undershirt. He carried no rifle, no grenades. In his right hand, he held only a standard-issue Kabar combat knife, its high-carbon steel blade coated in a matte black finish. The magistrate scoffed. "A sliver of metal. He is already dead." Down in the arena, the Krell hound smelled to the human. It turned, its massive muscles coiling like high-tension springs. It didn't roar. It simply launched itself forward with a terrifying, explosive burst of speed. Miller didn't freeze. As the beast lunged, a blur of grey carapace and teeth, Miller dove to the side. But the beast was too fast. One of its 6 legs clipped Miller's shoulder, and a razor-sharp spur sliced through his flesh. Miller hit the ground, rolling, coming up in a crouch 10 yards away. Blood immediately began soaking the left side of his undershirt. In the observation deck, the magistrate leaned back in satisfaction. "First blood. Your operator is compromised. The Krell hound's venom induces paralytic shock. Furthermore, his cardiovascular system will now begin failing due to blood loss. It is over." Percival didn't look away from the glass. "Watch closely, magistrate. You're about to see Earth's greatest trick." Down in the pit, Miller didn't collapse. He didn't seize. Instead, the severe trauma triggered a biochemical cascade that no alien species could comprehend. The pain and the threat of death slammed into Miller's endocrine system. His adrenal glands opened the floodgates, dumping massive amounts of epinephrine and norepinephrine directly into his bloodstream. Ocular response. Miller's pupils dilated, taking in maximum light and movement. Cardiovascular spike. His heart rate spiked to 160 beats per minute, pumping oxygen-rich blood to his major muscle groups. Pulmonary dilation. His bronchioles dilated, pulling in massive volumes of air. The pain in his shoulder evaporated, overwritten by the brain's overriding command: survive and destroy. Furthermore, the venom the magistrate boasted of, a neurotoxin designed to shut down the nervous systems of Ventrosian prey, was largely protein-based. The extreme spike of cortisol and adrenaline in Miller's human bloodstream essentially bulldozed right through the alien toxin, rendering it into little more than a mild irritant. His blood, highly rich in platelets, was already rushing to the wound, cascading into a thick clot to seal the tear. Miller stood up. He rolled his bleeding shoulder, gripped his car bar tighter, and looked at the alien beast. Then slowly, Miller smiled. It wasn't a smile of joy. It was a baring of teeth, a primal, terrifying expression that echoed 1,000,000 years of survival on the African savanna. The Krell hound hesitated. Its alien instincts were deeply confused. Prey was supposed to run. Prey was supposed to die when struck. This creature was doing neither. The beast lunged again, but this time it lacked the element of surprise. Miller's adrenaline-fueled reflexes were peaked. He sidestepped the snapping jaws, brought his knife down in a brutal, plunging arc, and drove the carbon steel blade into the softer tissue between the beast's armored plates. The Krell hound shrieked, a deafening metallic sound, and thrashed wildly, throwing Miller back. The beast retreated to the far side of the massive arena, pacing furiously, trying to process the agonizing pain in its side. "What is happening?" the magistrate demanded, stepping closer to the glass. "His biometrics are surging. He should be entering systemic shock, but his neural activity is accelerating." "Adrenaline," Percival said coldly. "It's a hormone. In times of extreme stress, our bodies chemically bypass our physical limiters. It grants us hysterical strength, accelerates our reaction time, and numbs us to pain. But that's not even the best part. Keep watching." The Krell hound was an ambush predator. It relied on anaerobic respiration, short, incredibly fast bursts of energy. But those bursts generated massive amounts of internal heat and lactic acid. The beast needed to rest. It needed to pant and bleed off the heat. But Miller didn't let it. Miller began to walk toward the beast. A slow, steady, relentless march. The Krell hound snarled and sprinted to another corner of the arena, trying to put distance between itself and the human. It huddled in the shadows, its sides heaving heavily. A minute passed. Then the heavy, rhythmic thud, thud, thud of combat boots echoed. Miller rounded the corner, knife in hand, still smiling. The beast panicked. It lashed out, but Miller simply dodged, scoring another shallow cut on its leg, forcing the beast to sprint away again. "He is not attempting a lethal strike," the magistrate observed, its voice laced with genuine confusion. "He is just following it." "Exactly," Percival whispered. "You called us frail because we have no fur or scales, but look at Miller's skin." The magistrate's holographic sensors zoomed in on the human. Miller's skin was slick, coated in a sheen of moisture. "Sweat," Percival explained. "We are the only terrestrial predators that possess millions of eccrine glands across our entire body. The Krell hound has to stop to cool down. It has to pant. But humans, we cool ourselves while in motion. We can run in the blistering heat of a desert sun, and our bodies will regulate our temperature continuously." Down below, the Krell hound was rapidly deteriorating. It had sprinted 5 times, attempting to shake the human. Each time, it overheated more. Each time, its muscles flooded with more acidic waste. Its movements were becoming sluggish, its carapace drooping. No matter where it ran, no matter where it hid, it could hear those footsteps. Thud, thud, thud. The psychological toll was immense. The Krell hound was the terror of its home world. But now, it was experiencing a horror it had never known. The terror of being hunted by something that simply would not stop. 35 minutes into the trial, the Krell hound collapsed in the center of the arena. Thick yellow foam bubbled from its jaws. Its internal temperature had reached lethal levels. Its organs were beginning to parboil in its own trapped body heat. It couldn't run. It couldn't fight. It could only look up as Captain Miller casually closed the final distance. Miller didn't look tired. He was breathing steadily, drenched in sweat. Blood dried on his shoulder, eyes locked onto his prey with dead-eyed focus. Miller stood over the massive, heaving alien monster. He didn't gloat. He didn't hesitate. He knelt, found the gap at the base of the creature's skull, and drove the bar deep into its central nervous system, twisting the blade to sever the brain stem. The beast went limp. Miller stood up, wiped the black alien blood off his blade onto his trousers, and looked up directly at the observation glass. He pointed the tip of his knife straight at the magistrate. In the gallery, the magistrate took a subconscious step backward, its mandibles trembling. "Do you understand now?" Percival asked, his voice deathly quiet. "We don't need natural armor. We don't need fangs. We don't conquer by being the strongest in a single moment. We conquer because when the universe tries to kill us, we adapt, we bleed, we endure, and we hunt the nightmares to extinction." Percival turned his head, locking eyes with the terrified alien assessor. "We are the apex magistrate, and we have never been prey." The silence in the observation deck of the Armstrong orbital tether was absolute, broken only by the hum of the climate control systems and the distant, heavy breathing of Captain Miller through the comms. Down in the arena, the invincible Krell hound lay dead in a pool of its own corrosive blood, bested by a single, exhausted human, wielding a piece of sharpened steel. The magistrate's multifaceted eyes darted frantically, trying to process the impossibility of the data streaming across its neural interface. It stepped back from the tritanium glass, its bio-organic armor shifting uneasily. This is an anomaly," the magistrate stammered, its synthesized voice losing its aristocratic edge, replaced by a metallic stutter. A statistical outlier. Your operator is a genetic mutant. The Concordat does not build policy on the freak occurrences of a chaotic biosphere. Dr. Percival Hollings let out a slow, deliberate sigh. He walked over to the main console, bypassing the holographic displays of beasts and zooming in on a live feed of Earth, a swirling marble of blue and white. "I told you, Magistrate, you fundamentally misunderstand us," Percival said, his tone shifting from academic calm to something far more dangerous. "Miller isn't an anomaly. He's just the one we let off the leash today. But if you want to talk about statistics, let's talk about the data we've been gathering on you." The magistrate's mandibles flared. "You have no data. Your primitive sensor arrays cannot penetrate our ship's shielding." General Thomas Reed, who had remained silently stoic for the entire hour, finally cracked a grim smile. "You really think we'd let a massive, uninvited alien dreadnought park in geosynchronous orbit without poking around your hard drives?" Percival tapped a few keys on his tablet. The screens in the room shifted from biological data to streams of complex, decrypted code. "You rely on quantum encryption, which is impressive, but your communication relays emit a localized electromagnetic bleed. It took the combined mainframe processing power of Palantir Technologies, the NSA's Fort Meade supercomputers, and a dedicated AI architecture from Lockheed Martin exactly 4 days to crack your encryption matrix." The magistrate froze. "We've been reading your internal ship communications for a week," Percival continued, his voice dropping into a deadly hushed cadence. "We know about the assessment. We know about the resource world classification. But more importantly, Magistrate, we know why you're really here." Percival pressed a final button. A fragmented, decoded tactical map of the Orion Cygnus arm appeared. Vast swaths of it were glowing, angry, burning red. "You aren't here as judges looking to uplift a primitive species into your peaceful utopia," Percival said, leaning over the console. "You're running. You are losing a massive multi-system war against an expanding synthetic intelligence on the galactic fringe. The Concordat's military forces are being decimated. You didn't come to Earth to assess our worthiness. You came to draft us. You want our billions to serve as biological meat shields on your front lines. You wanted to classify us as a resource world so you could conscript our population." The magistrate's silence was a deafening confirmation. The alien ambassador drew itself up to its full height of 8 feet, its chitinous armor locking into place. The pretense of diplomacy evaporated. "Your espionage is irrelevant," the magistrate hissed, its translator matrix echoing with sudden, cold hostility. "If you know the truth, then you know you cannot resist. The Concordat's armada surrounds this sector. If you will not submit voluntarily as a lesser species, we will initiate the pacification protocol. We do not need you to be willing. We only need you to be compliant." The magistrate reached to its chest plate and twisted a small, glowing dial. "We rule our subjugated worlds through psionic synchrony, a localized low-frequency neural dampening wave. It aligns chaotic brainwaves into docile, suggestive patterns. Your adrenaline cannot save you from your own mind's shutting down." A high-pitched, inaudible hum instantly filled the room. It was a weapon designed to instantly pacify billions, to overwrite the will of entire species, forcing their conscious minds into a state of vegetative obedience. Percival felt a sudden, sharp pressure behind his eyes. The room swam for a fraction of a second. Next to him, General Reed grunted, rubbing his temples as if staving off a sudden migraine. Down in the arena, Captain Miller blinked rapidly, shaking his head. The magistrate stood triumphant, waiting for the humans to collapse to their knees in mindless subjugation. 10 seconds passed. General Reed reached into his breast pocket, pulled out a blister pack of ibuprofen, popped 2 pills into his mouth, and swallowed them dry. "Christ," Reed muttered. "Feels like a Tuesday morning hangover." The magistrate stared in absolute horror. "Why? Why are you standing? Your neural pathways should be collapsing into absolute synchrony. Your willpower should be broken." Percival chuckled, a sound that sent a chill down the alien's spine. "Psionic synchrony? You're trying to force order onto a human brain? Magistrate, our minds are a biochemical war zone." Percival tapped his own temple. "You're dealing with a species that suffers from chronic anxiety, clinical depression, ADHD, and a relentless, non-stop internal monologue. Our brains are already flooded with competing chaotic electrical signals. We drown ourselves in caffeine, nicotine, and digital overstimulation just to get through the day. Your pacification wave is just white noise to us. You can't break our minds because they are already beautifully, aggressively broken." Realizing its ultimate weapon had failed, the magistrate panicked. It slammed a fist onto its comms gauntlet. "Praetorian Guard, breach the tether, eradicate the command staff, secure the installation." The heavy titanium doors of the observation deck groaned as plasma cutters from the outside began to slice through the locking mechanisms. The Concordat was done playing games. General Reed didn't flinch. He calmly keyed his collar microphone. "Control, this is Reed. The guests have worn out their welcome. Execute Protocol Coyote. Weapons free." "Copy that, General," a voice crackled back over the comms. "Lighting them up." The magistrate sneered. "My Praetorian Guard are clad in reactive plasma shielding. Your kinetic projectiles will melt before they even touch their armor. You are brave, humans, but you are outmatched." "Are we?" General Reed asked. The doors blew inward in a shower of molten slag. 4 towering alien Praetorians stormed into the room. They were heavily armored, wielding devastating plasma rifles, their bodies enveloped in shimmering, translucent blue energy shields. But they didn't get to fire a single shot. The air vents above the Praetorians suddenly detonated. It wasn't high explosives, it was a coordinated deployment of M84 stun grenades, flashbangs. The blinding flash of 2 million candela and the deafening 170 decibel concussive blast didn't care about plasma shielding. Energy shields deflect high-velocity energy and mass, but they do not filter light and sound. The aliens, possessing highly sensitive auditory and optic receptors meant for perfect synchrony, were instantly paralyzed. They dropped their weapons, shrieking as their overloaded senses plunged them into agonizing chaos. Before the smoke could even clear, the observation deck's side panels swung open. A 6-man tactical team from Academy, led by a heavily armed operative named Carter, swarmed into the room. They weren't using lasers or plasma. They were using 12-gauge Mossberg 59 pump-action shotguns loaded with dense, depleted uranium slugs. The physics were brutally simple. The alien shields were calibrated to deflect fast-moving, high-energy particle beams. They were completely unequipped to handle the raw, kinetic, slow-moving mass of a heavy lead slug slamming into the physical shield emitters strapped to the aliens' chests. The first volley shattered the emitters. The shields dropped. The second volley tore through the bio-organic armor like paper. Within 4 seconds, the invincible Praetorian Guard lay dead on the floor, their blue blood pooling on the sterile white tiles. Carter racked his shotgun, ejecting a smoking shell casing that clattered loudly in the sudden silence. He leveled the barrel directly at the magistrate's head. "Clear!" Carter barked. "Stand down, Carter," General Reed ordered. He walked over to the trembling magistrate, whose multifaceted eyes were filled with a terror it had never known. Down below, the secure doors to the arena hissed open, and Captain Miller, covered in sweat and alien blood, casually walked out, wiping his knife. Percival Hollings stepped over the bodies of the Praetorians and stood face to face with the magistrate. "You asked to see Earth's apex predator," Percival said, his voice cold and echoing with absolute authority. "You thought it was a single beast. You thought it was a bear or a tiger or one man in a pit. But you fundamentally failed to understand our biology." Percival gestured to Carter, to Miller below, to General Reed, and to the cameras streaming the feed to the Joint Command Centers on Earth. "We are not apex predators because of our individual strength. We are the apex because we are a pack. We communicate. We coordinate. When one of us falls, another steps up. We use the very environment against our enemies. You rely on perfect tech and perfect synchrony. We rely on adaptability, spite, and a willingness to do whatever it takes to survive." The magistrate fell to its knees, its armor clanking against the floor. The Armada, they will glass your planet from orbit." "They won't," Percival replied, pulling up a new data stream on the console. "While your Praetorians were busy getting shot, the cybersecurity teams at Raytheon and the NSA hijacked your ship's targeting mainframe using the back door we found in your communications array. We just locked your Armada's weapons systems. Furthermore, we've pinpointed the exact coordinates of this synthetic threat you're so terrified of." Percival crouched down, forcing the alien to look him in the eye. "Earth doesn't join the Concordat, Magistrate. We don't do servitude, but we do understand war. And we understand profit." General Reed stepped up beside Percival, folding his arms. "You're going to return to your superiors. You're going to tell them that the Earth is off limits. But you will also tell them that humanity is willing to offer our services. You need an apex predator to hunt the machines that are killing you. We will be your sword. But we dictate the terms. We dictate the price. And we dictate the strategy." The magistrate, stripped of its arrogance, its weapons useless, its mind control shattered, and its dreadnought compromised, could only slowly nod its massive head. "Understood," the alien whispered, the Boston Dynamics translator perfectly capturing the absolute defeat in its voice. Percival stood up, adjusting his suit jacket. He looked out the massive tritanium windows, past the orbital tether, out into the vast, glittering expanse of the Milky Way. It wasn't a dark, scary forest anymore. It was a hunting ground. "Welcome to the food chain," Percival smiled. "This narrative serves as an incredible journey into the heart of human endurance and defiance. Audiences who appreciate such deep dives into sci-fi, HFY, humanity fuck yeah, storytelling, and wish to experience more epic tales of humanity demonstrating its apex status to the universe are encouraged to like and share the content. Enthusiasts can subscribe to the associated channel for weekly stories designed to evoke pride in the human spirit, with more captivating content to follow in the next installment.